This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Actia Annual Leadership Conference. I'm Jared Davis. I'll be facilitating the session this morning with Nikki, and I'm the CTE principal for the Wish We BOCES in Saratoga. So we're welcoming Nikki Lester, who's going to present for us on and inspiring women in CTE leadership. Before we start with Nikki, we're going to have a brief message from our sponsor, and then we'll get started. Thank you again for joining us.
Welcome to the real world of virtual reality on the zSpace platform. What is zSpace? It's a tabletop virtual reality that's transforming education today, regardless of whether students are learning at school or remotely. zSpace functions as your typical Windows PC until you open a zSpace application, and then the magic really begins. Long story short, zSpace tracks the user's stylus in real time, allowing the user to comfortably reach in, interact, move around, dissect, blow up, or change different variables within the environment.
All right, thank you. So Nikki, I think Jamie is done sharing her screen, so I will turn it over to you, and I will be monitoring the chat for any questions that come in, and if you need anything, let me know.
Awesome, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, awesome, thank you. All right, so just getting things situated here. All right, so good morning and welcome to Inspiring Women in Career and Technical Education Leadership, or CTE Leadership. My name is Nikki Lester, and I'm the Executive Director of the Career and Technical Education area within zSpace. A little bit about me. I have been with zSpace for about 3 years as of April 1st. So went through the pandemic with zSpace. Prior to that, I was in education. I was in a district right outside of Colorado Springs, District 49, about 25,000 strong, where I was the career and tech ed director for the 8 years. Prior to that, I was in the same district, but I was a high school teacher. So I spent 16 years there in education. Prior to that, I came from the industry. I worked in IT as a configuration manager, network specialist, help desk, all of those types of things. And then early on, besides a couple of other things along the way, early on, I was a diesel mechanic in the military. I was one of those students in high school. I grew up with a brother with cancer. And so academically, I could have been strong, but with a home life that was a mess, I found the auto shop to be one of the great places that I could live and get through high school and go on. And so I found career in tech ed early on, and it's been a blessing ever since. Today, as we're talking, I have some guests with me. We're going to kind of do a round table, and they're sharing some of their best practices on recruiting, retention, and embracing the technology or some of the new technologies that we see today. So along with me, I have Pilar. She is an assistant superintendent, and her location, she jumps around a little bit, likes to move, and she'll speak about that during her who she is. I have Jean. She is an educational technologist in Alaska. Allison Edge, she is a NAS Academy Director in California, Burbank, California. Nikki Carter, who is a career and tech ed director in Widefield School District. She's outside of Colorado, so she's kind of near me. And Megan Case, also in Colorado, is the career and tech ed director and also an assistant principal at Fountain Fort Carson High School. So they will all share some of their experiences today with us. Before we get started, and if any of you have any questions or would like to jump off mute or put those in the chat, we can address those. I know that there was a video played, which kind of surprised me because it did take some of what you'll see in my presentation as well, but it was a great way to start because I did see a comment about how cool that was. Just a plug for what I do. I did join zSpace 3 years ago. It is an augmented virtual reality hardware software platform for training and engagement for students from kindergarten all the way up through workforce. And so in the technology landscape, here is just an example of some of the different landscapes that are out there. Hopefully, and you can shake your head, you can raise your hand, you can say yes, but have any of you, or hopefully some of you, have experienced some of these platforms, or at least one of them along the way up till now, either through a head-mounted device, putting on a whole device and going into a different world, or I was in the classroom when Pokemon Go came about and we had students running in the street. We had no idea what they were running after. So the augmented reality is a little bit different. And then we find ourselves somewhere in the middle. Just those landscapes themselves, just some of the characteristics. So the head-mounted device or the virtual reality, right? You put that on, you're fully immersed in that type of environment. There are some different, again, I'll back up and say, anytime you can scaffold learning and do different things within, that area to engage students and the users, great, right? There are these different platforms and none of them are wrong. There are some best practices in each one. We have a little bit different space. Here in this space specifically, when you, and if you have never put on an Oculus or a head-mounted device, you are literally fully immersed within that environment. You are physically still where you were at, but you are taken into a different place, and a 360 environment is what is surrounding you. So I've swam with sharks and did some different things like that. Again, one platform to work from. The other platform, as I mentioned, this is kind of your Pokemon Go, or what a lot of people would refer to as being able to see the filters with the little animal, ears or noses, those types of things that you see within the pictures of what users are doing. That's your augmented reality, and that's putting things into the place where users can see and work with them. Finally, what you saw before on the video was what zSpace is. And I'm not going to replay this video for you just because it was played at the very beginning. But within here, as you can see, the user can sit behind our device. It is a hardware. We have the software, but you do need the hardware because there are specialized cameras in there. And once sitting behind that, they can go ahead and put on our glasses, pick up our stylus, and be able to manipulate and render those images so that those models come about 2 to 3 inches off of the screen for the users. And they can manipulate them, they can pull them apart in a lot of instances. I can dissect a frog 100 times before I would actually touch the real thing. So again, in here, just a little plug for us, this is zSpace. It is a hardware software. Now, one thing I will mention that is pretty exciting news, and you saw it a little bit in the video, we now have a platform on a laptop that you no longer need the glasses. You still have the stylus, but this new platform is now engaging and can render these objects because it's looking at your eyes. So it's stereoscopic versus looking at the trackers from the glasses. So 2 platforms that we offer, 1 laptop, 1 more of a desktop.
Welcome to the real.
Let's go on. Thanks. Okay. So moving forward, so why zSpace, right? And then we're going to go on into our panel and talk about our recruiting and those types of things. One of the things that I kind of live by in working with zSpace, and where I found it was really, really great when we integrated into our district, is it allows educators to do things that would otherwise be dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, and or expensive. That danger in career and tech ed, looking at combustion of an engine, I mentioned I was a diesel mechanic, right? Trying to see those gears rotate, the abstract concepts. Here you can see the chemicals, physics, being able to see gravity and doing different things on different planets. So whether you're removing the danger or you're giving something that's impossible by seeing some of those molecules being able to bounce in front of your face, or gravity on a different planet, all of these things can be done in here. Counterproductive, I consider like dissecting can being counterproductive in the fact that you only have 1 specimen, if you're not partnering up with another, user or student and doing it as a team, you usually only have 1 specimen to work from. In this world, as I mentioned, I can dissect things 100 times before. And so when I get to the real thing, hopefully then it can be a more valuable experience versus a one-time shot. For a lot of users, that redundancy or that repetition is what they need. And then finally, expensive, right? Overseeing a medical academy, at one time I had bought $6,500 worth of parts, and they came in over the weekend. That I believe they were cow eyes, something like that the students were going to dissect. And it sat on the loading dock all weekend, therefore ruining that experience for those students for that entire semester. Things like that can be put into our world and can be done and provided for students that conquer all of this. So DICE is the term that I like to live by when talking about zSpace. So now we're going to go ahead. I'm going to take a pause. Again, I used to teach, so I can talk. I'll take a pause for just a second. Jared, are there any questions so far that we need to answer? Or if anybody has a question?
There are no questions in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. All right. So now to go on with the panel, we're just going to go in and hear from our experts that you saw early on, and hear some of their take as to how do they recruit their students, how do they retain them, and dealing with the technology at hand. So a little bit about who they are and how they ended up here.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Pilar Vasquez Villalba, and I am the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services at Morgan Hill Unified School District. I am a former high school principal, and I had 5 career pathways when I was a principal in Chicago Public Schools. And after that, I was a director of educational services in a career technical center in Silicon Valley, named Silicon Valley, CTE. And then now I am serving in a community, in a district that has career technical education programs. Interestingly enough, it's my first CTE program that I'm leading that has agriculture, which is very new to me. I've never had that before. My first introduction into CTE was back in 2007 when I became an assistant principal, and that was in Glendale, Arizona. Yes, I move around a lot because I believe that there's so much to learn in education and how different systems serve students. And so I was there for about 10 years. It's probably where most of my career has been. And carpentry was the trades were huge in the particular district that I was in. So that's a little bit about my background and in the different cities and districts that I've served.
The shortened version of how I ended up, I'm originally from Australia, involved a ferry ride and putting up my tent next to a gentleman who looks safe and Turned out he wasn't so safe because I ended up marrying him. But so I'm married to Alaskan, which has, forever changed my life, moving from an Australian city to a remote community in the interior of Alaska, and also the coldest inhabited town in North America. Yesterday we had 47 below, as was our morning temperature. I've been working in CTE for about the last 5 years. It's been an incredible journey. And I can't really see myself doing anything else at the moment, just because I feel it's an innovative and exciting place to be in terms of education. Our population is predominantly Alaska Native. I think statistically 60% of our population is Alaska Native, although of the 7 schools that I serve, some of the schools are 100% Alaska Native students. And Tok is the biggest community that our school district serves. In the winter, we have about 800 people here. And then in the summer months, it swells to about 1,200 people.
It was in the mid-90s. I was getting my business teacher credential to teach in California. I started at Burbank High School teaching accounting, which is a CTE course. And, they used to call it voc ed, et cetera, ROP, all the different things that California had labeled along the way. And I was lucky because there was no other positions anywhere near me at that time. The closest was in Las Vegas. So I started teaching accounting, and we happened to have this program called the NAF, Academy of Finance, at that time. And so it was a sequence, a path of classes, and it included all these other work-based learning pieces, and loved that. And eventually, after a few years, I became the director, and then taught that class for quite a while, other CTE courses like computers and so forth, how to use Excel and so on. I also was our digital high school grant coordinator, and then taught lessons to all of our staff, and just continued to kind of get involved in what we would all consider still CTE courses, so with students and staff. And then I decided this program was great, the kids loved it, we needed to expand. And that's when I approached our district office to bring in new pathways and to bring it to our other high school as well. And then that's when we added our engineering academy, 1 for each school, and our medical academy, 1 at each school. So we have 5 now. I am totally out of the classroom as a teacher on special assignment as the NAF Academy director for our district. And so I work with the 5 academies, and there's like, when I bring in all the English cohort teachers as well as our elective teachers, it's about 33 teachers and about 1,100 students.
So I am Megan Case. I am an assistant principal and CTE director for Fountain Fort Carson School District 8. Prior to this, I was a PE teacher in Harrison District 2 and then in District 11. And then I was a dean of students in Cheyenne Mountain School District. Kind of the process of getting into leadership, really, my husband kind of pushed me that direction, and I was like, yeah, okay. I had some really negative experiences in some different places, not from anyone in the school or any of the kids, but some of the central admin that I didn't feel like really understood what happens in the building on a day-to-day basis and how it affects kids. So I kind of took that and some of my kind of prior skills just from life and thought, okay, let's jump into this, right? Because the experiences that I had in some of the places needed to be different for some of the experiences for students and teachers moving forward to make it a more positive environment.
My name is Nikki Carter, and I am with Widefield School District 3, which is on the south side of Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I have been with this district for 18 years. I started out as a business and marketing teacher. For the first 3 years, I was with the district, and then I moved into a work-based learning coordinator position for for about 7 years, I would say, where I was also district-based. So I was working with local businesses to get students credit for their work-based learning opportunities. After I worked in that capacity, I actually kind of moved into an interesting media technology librarian role at Mesa Ridge High School. And interestingly enough, we were able to tie some of those components to CTE as well because of the administrative pieces for media technology. And right after that, I took on this role as CTE director, and I've been in this role for about seven years now, helping to manage all the state and federal funding through Perkins and CTA, and working with teachers to find opportunities through those resources for their students and for themselves.
Great. So now that you have heard a little bit about them and their diversity and backgrounds, they were all asked, how do they recruit their students?
So I guess I have two answers to this. The bigger picture for me in administration is to give appropriate attention to the development of data that can inform effective recruitment strategies for me. I think we get tied up in the day-to-day kind of running of things and forget to take a step back and make some decisions about recruitment based on data. So that is something that I feel in terms of leadership that we should all be looking at. And I feel also too that student recruitment is just one component of best practice in strategic enrollment management, but it's a really critical piece. So it's important that we get it right. So some of the ways that we recruit for CTE here is things like we have a CTE showcase at the end of each year so that students can see what is available, the success stories. We do career surveys. The other thing that I pay particular attention to is to make sure that I have a talented and engaged staff team. They're my most precious resource. You know, and as a leader, I feel like I need to do everything feasible to help staff be successful, and then that drives the recruitment. And then one of the things that, you know, Z-Space plays a part in, for instance, our CTE showcase. It's available for students coming into the program who want to look at small engines or nursing careers or veterinary sciences to actually go, wow, this is really engaging. I get to use this as a tool. But, you know, this answer is very much specific to a small rural community, and these are some of the strategies that we use.
I think it depends. If you're from a comprehensive district, then how you're going to go about recruiting in-house is different than if you're in a center. When I was in a center, we had 42 schools, high schools that we were able to recruit from. And that was very complex, very much to what Jane was saying. We looked at our data, we looked at trend data. I was very intentional about looking at demographic population data, who has access to our programs and who doesn't have access to our programs, not just in relation to race and ethnicity, but also in relation to gender and relation to academic status. I found there was some trend data that was very indicative of students who were in AP courses did not have access to our CTE classes. A lot of it had to do with the way master scheduling was done. A lot of it had to do with bias. So how was it that I was able to get in front of well over 40 different counselors plus to inform them of this is what career technical education is, and this is what it isn't. In the state of California, career technical education also became an indicator for college graduation. So that became a good leverage for us. That being said, we also had to recruit the parents. That became another huge piece of it. It's one thing having the programs that kids were going to be interested in. So we did a lot of focus groups. We would do a lot of, I mean, we'd have to look at obviously the workforce and what does that look like, right? Like, are we offering the programs that are going to be sustainable and also be able to provide students an opportunity, a pathway to college, and, you know, and beyond through high school or program and then college beyond. So that was one piece of it. But then the other piece was talking to parents and educating parents on what career technical education is. So our systems were multifaceted. It wasn't just about recruiting the student. That was a big piece of it, but it was so far more complex. I find that just because I could speak from both perspectives, right? From a district and a center, I find that centers, because it's the only thing they have to focus on, they get it, they know how to do it, they know how to do it really well, because that's 100% what they could focus on. They are very strategic with it, and I learned plenty about how to go about it and do it well. When you get into a district and you're recruiting from within, you're competing with teachers who are also teaching electives. You're competing with your AP classes. You're competing with a lot of other stuff that's going on. There's a culture behind career technical education, so you have to educate even from within. There's union, there's a whole bunch of other aspects that centers obviously don't have to deal with to the degree that a district has to deal with. And so being able to navigate that also creates another complex piece. I don't know if that answers the question, but I recognize that those are the challenges that districts have to navigate.
The biggest thing for getting students into programs is making sure that the staff member that you have overseeing the program is someone that the students relate to and that gives high quality instruction. Because if the students don't want to be there and haven't heard good things about the teacher, they're not going into that program. So when we take people that are already here and ask them to do a program, we're really looking for the fit of how they will fit into that and how they will make that grow and their personality and whether or not kids can relate to them. So really it's about fit and personality and that at first. Once we get into that, then we start, doing things to draw interest and draw kids into it, like, oh, what are they doing? So it's called Elected Palooza. So we have a day in the cafeteria where the elected teachers set up basically a booth. And they have, like our biomed team set out a pig and we're talking about body parts and things like that. And culinary pulled out, and, they made blondies or something for that. But anyway, so they sell their program to the kids when they're trying to pick their electives. We also do Rising Freshman Night, which is a night where our 8th graders, incoming freshmen, come in with their parents. And we have all of our coaches available with a booth. We have all of our clubs available. We have all of our departments available. We have all of our electives, everything on display, so the parents can wander and talk and get information, and students can see all of the opportunities in our building before they get. Two is we really celebrate the success of our programs. So we will, put on the announcements that, DECA did this at state or whatever. And we do board of education celebrations too, where we send our kids and their instructors over to the board meetings to get recognized that way. We're really active in the community and trying to make good partnerships outside of our building as well. So that I think helps too.
Recruiting students. So I am going to use actually an example here. We have an offsite facility here that we share with another school district, Peyton School District, and we offer 3 unique skilled trades programs, cabinet making, construction, and welding. And so when it comes to recruiting for those programs, we actually tried to go outside of the district as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as far as internal recruiting, we actually have had a lot of opportunities over this last year to bring in 8th graders to start with. And so that has, over time, has traditionally been a good thing for our programs out here, because the students can actually see in person what the programs look like, what the projects look like, what they can anticipate, what the outcomes are. And it really helps them understand what skilled trades are and whether or not they want to be one of those kids who are hands-on. And so that's a great element for us to recruit students, is we actually can bring those 8th graders out. And we also bring all the high schools out. We bring out, we have actually 4 specific high schools here, if you will, that we feed into our mill. We have a couple of traditional high schools, an alternative high school, and an online school. So we bring all of those incoming 10th and 11th graders out as well. So they have the opportunity to see those programs. So that has really helped our recruitment levels internally, as well as advertising at the traditional open houses with parents and for the 9th grade orientation that we have at the buildings. As far as external, which is also an interesting component here at the mill, we actually partner with outside districts as well who don't have manufacturing programs. And so with that, we have actually had the chance lately to partner with Peyton and find opportunities to get not just out flyers, but who do those flyers go to, and who do we communicate with at charter schools or private schools who don't necessarily have the funding for some of those skilled trades courses. And so we are in the process of communicating those aspects as well going into next school year to help recruit.
So one of the things I'll just jump in and note is, if you noticed, again, lots of different aspects from where these ladies are from, right? A couple are from tech centers, some are from some traditional types of high school areas. Excuse me, I was in a K-12 as well. And one of the other things that we did that before I had left and transitioned with Z-Space was we brought on a tool. We had done a lot of different things, like these ladies had also said, and tried. One of the last things we did that is still in process today is we brought on youth science. And youth science was a tool where, coming up through and understanding, we had all the academic data for students that we needed to help them into get to where they needed to for their specific classes, right? But we didn't have a lot of interest data. And how do you get that? And youth science was one that helped with some of those personality tests, some of those interest surveys that helped build a portfolio for students on that aptitude and interest area. So by having some of that data, and Jean alluded to being driven by data as well, by having some of that data as well, it also helped inform not what teachers could teach, but what students were interested in. Also then meeting the workforce area to say, what do we need to have based on the workforce needs, and kind of then forge a path as to some of the pathways or new programs that might be needed as students came up through. Moving into what do they recruit, or how do they recruit their minority subgroup?
If anybody's doing any work around educational equity or racial inequities and what that all means, the work starts with self, right? And so a lot of this work that I am most comfortable speaking about now started back in 2006, 2007. And so one of the very first things I do is really looking at the data and what is the data saying about my students who are most vulnerable in the system. And so that's just the very first thing that I've like somewhat trained myself to just look at. What is the data saying about our students? Who's most served? Who isn't served? And why is that? What is the data saying? Asking a lot of questions. And then there's quantitative data that only says a very small piece of the story. And then there's qualitative data. And the qualitative data isn't just the data that you get from the teachers, it's the data that you get from the students. It's the data that you get from the community partners, as you all know, for those that are, especially the teachers, right? Like those partnerships that you have with different folks within your industry. So hearing, just talking to them, I really got engaged in talking to them, talking to the counselors. That started to help me understand what really the mindset was around beliefs about kids, beliefs about career technical education. And then that started to help me understand where can I come in and provide some learning around, and it's not about career technical education, it's learning around mindsets, beliefs, and core values around children. Very different approach as far as a center. I'm talking to you from the perspective of a center. When I went in as a principal, I built out 2 programs, very different as a high school principal. Doing the work was different. I was dealing with different challenges.
I guess my answer differs in that it is more of a grassroots answer, but it is a high priority for my district that we recruit, especially kind of, you know, for field work that is non-traditional occupations, you know, with genders that are less than 25% of individuals typically employed in those careers. Some of the things that we do here is focus perhaps on gender more than the minority of the Alaska Native group, because that's a given. As I said, you know, with 100% of our students being Alaska Native, we're not targeting recruitment to them so much, although we're very aware of culturally what is appropriate in our CTE education for our Alaska Native population. But some of the things that we've done have been really successful is, for instance, we've invested in all of our shops to make sure that there is equipment and clothing that is suitable for girls, so that they don't walk into the environment feeling like there's not the opportunity to partake. We've got to order you a you know, special protective gear. We run a trip each year for girls to go and look at construction and manufacturing in the cities. We intentionally recruit business owners who have non-traditional employees to present to students at our CTE kind of fairs. We have an annual spring CTE day just for girls, so that we're, you know, embracing and welcoming difference.
And I would say this happened more than in engineering than anything, which was more than ethnic breakdown. I had to look at gender, and I had tons of boys interested in engineering and very few women. And so we talked on campus about what is it that often will inspire women to go do something, and they're caregivers, fixers, etc. And so we reframed our kind of our approach and our message when it came to engineering, about like, you want to build stuff, to what kind of problems do you want to solve, and how do you want to fix this to help someone, you know, whether it's making like, you know, a robotic arm for medical or building a bridge. You're still helping people, even though you're kind of talking about both of those things. But I'm not positive if that's what that reshaping helped, but we really have a lot more girls in engineering. The other two are pretty equal. But the same thing is this is the fifth year, only the fifth year of our engineering and our medical. So it also could just be that more kids have taken the program and they've talked about it, and it's just more known by our community and parents.
Minority subgroups, that's always an interesting, because you don't want to just limit it to anybody. So you want everybody to feel valued, and you want all students to know that they have opportunity in those programs. So when we communicate, we do communicate to the masses, but we also try to make sure that we have the availability to put out videos that has individuals in maybe non-minority areas or non-traditional areas. We have videos that are published on our websites. We have shared videos with counselors to show to eighth graders, show to some of those other students, and it shows different people of those capacity. And we also have brought in guest speakers. If you are currently in the program, we still want to recruit for the following year as well to bring in those non-minorities. So we have brought in guest speakers who, women who own electrical businesses, and they are able to come in and speak, as well as other non-traditional or minority races who own their own businesses. And we try to partner with them to come in and actually teach the students as well. So not necessarily bringing in freshmen, but it's a continuing ongoing recruitment for those students that we do up to their senior year.
Awesome. Then we moved into what role, because we're transitioning just a little bit. And rather than talking about the total recruitment and retention, we're talking about what role the technology plays in keeping some of our students.
So I guess I have two answers to this. The bigger picture for me in administration is to give appropriate attention to the development of data that can inform effective recruitment strategies for me. I think we get tied up in the day-to-day kind of running of things and forget to take a step back and make some decisions about recruitment based on data. So that is something that I feel in terms of leadership that we should all be looking at. And I feel also too that student recruitment is just one component of best practice in strategic enrollment management, but it's a really critical piece. So it's important that we get it right. So some of the ways that we recruit for CTE here is things like we have a CTE showcase at the end of each year so that students can see what is available, the success stories. We do career surveys. The other thing that I pay particular attention to is to make sure that I have a talented and engaged staff team. They're my most precious resource. You know, and as a leader, I feel like I need to do everything feasible to help staff be successful, and then that drives the recruitment. And then one of the things that, you know, Z-Space plays a part in, for instance, our CTE showcase. It's available for students coming into the program who want to look at small engines or nursing careers or veterinary sciences to actually go, wow, this is really engaging. I get to use this as a tool. But, you know, this answer is very much specific to a small rural community, and these are some of the strategies that we use.
I think it depends. If you're from a comprehensive district, then how you're going to go about recruiting in-house is different than if you're in a center. When I was in a center, we had 42 schools, high schools that we were able to recruit from. And that was very complex, very much to what Jane was saying. We looked at our data, we looked at trend data. I was very intentional about looking at demographic population data, who has access to our programs and who doesn't have access to our programs, not just in relation to race and ethnicity, but also in relation to gender and relation to academic status. I found there was some trend data that was very indicative of students who were in AP courses did not have access to our CTE classes. A lot of it had to do with the way master scheduling was done. A lot of it had to do with bias. So how was it that I was able to get in front of well over 40 different counselors plus to inform them of this is what career technical education is, and this is what it isn't. In the state of California, career technical education also became an indicator for college graduation. So that became a good leverage for us. That being said, we also had to recruit the parents. That became another huge piece of it. It's one thing having the programs that kids were going to be interested in. So we did a lot of focus groups. We would do a lot of, I mean, we'd have to look at obviously the workforce and what does that look like, right? Like, are we offering the programs that are going to be sustainable and also be able to provide students an opportunity, a pathway to college, you know, and beyond through high school or program and then college beyond. So that was one piece of it. But then the other piece was talking to parents and educating parents on what career technical education is. So our systems were multifaceted. It wasn't just about recruiting the student. That was a big piece of it, but it was so far more complex. I find that just because I could speak from both perspectives, right? From a district and a center, I find that centers, because it's the only thing they have to focus on, they get it. They know how to do it. They know how to do it really well, because that's 100% what they could focus on. They are very strategic with it. And I learned plenty about how to go about it and do it well. When you get into a district and you're recruiting from within, you're competing with teachers who are also teaching electives. You're competing with your AP classes. You're competing with a lot of other stuff that's going on. there's a culture behind career technical education. So you have to educate even from within. There's union, there's a whole bunch of other aspects that centers obviously don't have to deal with to the degree that a district has to deal with. And so being able to navigate that also creates another complex piece. I don't know if that answers the question, but I recognize that those are the challenges that districts have to navigate.
COVID absolutely helped us in that regard. It is absolutely technology. It's in your face all the time. And it's the world that we live in. Our students are so tech savvy just because of their cell phones. You know, they can do a lot of things. So, and that's how they relate to the world. So being able to bring technology into the classroom and make it a part of their learning because it is so relevant to their lives only helps move them forward. And I think, you know, the more creative we can get with the technology and being able to bring that into the classroom, that's only going to help you recruit and retain. When we try again, I mean, we have all kinds of fun things that we do because our kids like hands-on learning and they relate to technology.
You know, I think technology is very important, but I only think it's as valuable as the information that the teacher sees is valuable and that they understand. And the reason I say that is because we throw around technology terms, we throw around STEM terms, but if the teacher doesn't understand the value or hasn't been given the additional instruction, if you will, behind the scenes of what that technology is used for or how it is valuable to students, it's hard to use that as a retention piece for anybody, to be honest with you. So I think it actually, as valuable as it is for students to understand, I think it starts at the teacher level, and that includes a responsibility from administrators to make sure teachers see the value and give them the PD that they need so they can see how that will intertwine with their curriculum. Here at the Mill, we do have different aspects that we use, and I'm not just talking about like a computer that they use for OSHA or something like that, but I'm also talking about some of the equipment that we have in our advanced CAD equipment and the VCARV software that we use. Some of those higher level pieces of technology, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't train your teachers on what the value is or how to utilize those and how to utilize them for students, it's hard to retain teachers. So I think it's literally starting at the teacher level to make sure they're comfortable and not just know how, but to see the value and the outcomes for the students and how it's going to help them succeed into the work world.
Great. And then one final question that we had in kind of this roundtable is, what do they say to CTE leaders or other leaders who are hesitant to embrace technology? And we know that that has kind of maybe changed in how the focus or the reality since the pandemic. But it was interesting to hear what they had to say.
Of course, I think that it's important, and the exposure for the kids, even if they're not becoming experts or if the leader is not the expert. Even when I taught back in the day using, you know, Microsoft Office, I would often have kids who were experts in some of it that I would learn from, and you have to be okay with that. And that sometimes is the hurdle that maybe a more experienced teacher or a veteran teacher that is used to being the main lead in the room, and they're threatened sometimes by that or worried about that. And it's okay to not be the expert on some of that, but it's important to want to embrace that and to bring it in the classroom and let kids have that experience and sometimes just learn it together. You'll find that it will open up students' eyes to maybe enjoy your subject matter more because they can see it from a different level. They can see it and experience it sometimes like right there, rather than it's book and you're talking, you can see something else. So that would be, I guess, my advice for anyone who's hesitant or worried about that.
I think the first question would be to ask themselves why, and what's the fear, or what is the risk that they're not willing to take? I think that starts where it's at. And I think it's seeking resources to find out what the value is. Again, when it comes to administrators, you don't know what you don't know, and everybody's still always on a learning curve. But I think you have to ask yourself, what's the real reason we need that technological piece? Understanding what the students can get out of it, understanding what the value holds into industry, and then seeking out, again, those resources to help you feel comfortable with it. I think sometimes technology changes so consistently that there can be traditional blocks for some individuals that aren't comfortable. So I think it's diving in and asking why and figuring out who those go-to people are to help you get through that for your kids.
I don't know why you would not embrace it. That's what our world is moving to. We're moving to being tech savvy, innovators, not just, the traditional, book and paper. The way we learn as students going through education is not how the kids in this generation learn. And if you just try to give a kid a book and have them sit and read, they're not probably going to be so interested, but if you give the kid the book in the internet, on a browser, they might sit and read, and they know how to take tools from the internet and annotate it while they're doing it. And it's more engaging to them. And they'll do it while they have their earbuds in, listening to music and a game going over here. And, so this is their world now. So we need to adapt to make it more beneficial for them.
Sorry about that, I was on mute. And then finally, why we do what we do, right? The outcome of all of these conversations of why we continue to progress and try to move forward and make things available for students.
Hey guys, I'm a 2013 D49 Falcon High School graduate, and I wanted to share the opportunities that I was given by completing the health program at Falcon High School. A little background information: I hated school, didn't want to go, had no interest, no plan, no goals, anything. And I heard about the health program and I thought, well, it's something different. Let me take it just to pass time till I can drop out. After my first semester, I really fell in love with this course, and it truly saved my life. I heard of all the classes they had to offer. I took all of them, which helped me stay in school. It gave me a goal, it gave me motivation to graduate. And not only that, I graduated with close to 20 college credits for Pikes Peak, which is about the equivalent of a sophomore in college. So while I'm walking across the stage for my high school diploma, I'm a sophomore in college. Right after I turned 18, I got a job as a CNA in healthcare. For about 2 to 3 years, I did that. And I'm still working in the health field to this day. I was given so many opportunities, and I've given opportunities that are so amazing and mind-blowing. It's crazy. I have built amazing working relationships with the medical community, and I'm still going to school. I'm still striving to be even better than I was yesterday. I don't know where I'm headed, but that's the beautiful thing about the health field. You can do anything. There's so many opportunities, and I encourage all of you and anybody interested to get information and seriously consider changing your life. This has helped me be able to support my family. I'm able to buy a home. I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet with no help, all due to this program and those who helped me and those who believed in me. Hey guys, I'm a 23.
Awesome. So with that being said, that kind of completes the roundtable discussion that we had. If you have any questions or comments, you can come off mute and we can address those now. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here and participating this morning.
So if you don't see the chat, there is a survey for the session that Rochelle just put into the chat. And while you think of your questions, if you have any questions for Nikki, thank you again for joining our session. We appreciate you being here.